Everyone thinks their family is normal. There are a few old stories no one brings up, a few photos hidden in a shoebox, a few vague answers when kids start asking way too many questions. But in America now, all it takes is one click for the past to pop the lid. A DNA test marketed as a fun Christmas gift can turn a cozy family dinner into an emergency meeting real quick. And the funny part? It almost always starts with someone who genuinely meant well. Story 1. The gift that was supposed to be fun. The story starts with Tom, a classic suburban dad. Weekend BBQs, small talk with the neighbors, always bragging that his family is simple and has no secrets. He genuinely believed everything in his house was as clear and predictable as the neighborhood trash pickup schedule. That year, Tom bought DNA test kits for the whole family as gifts. In his head, it was just going to be fun. Maybe someone's a little Irish. Maybe a surprise Viking ancestor. Nothing serious. His wife smiled politely. The kids were excited. Grandpa shook his head and said it was a waste of money. Tom didn't care. He wrapped the gifts carefully and waited for the results like a kid waiting for Christmas morning. 2 weeks later, the email arrived. Tom opened the laptop in the kitchen and called everyone over. A few seconds in, his smile vanished. According to the results, the man Tom had called his biological father for decades was not related to him at all. The kitchen went dead silent. His dad froze. His mom stared down at the floor, avoiding eye contact. Only Uncle Dave, his dad's longtime best friend, started wiping sweat off his forehead even though the AC was blasting. And that's when Tom finally understood why, back in the summer of 1998, Uncle Dave had been so helpful he practically moved in with the family. Story 2. The respectable father and the job nobody saw coming. This dad was the definition of respectable. Soft-spoken, church every Sunday, constantly reminding his kids that family honor was everything. Neighbors trusted him so much they handed him their house keys whenever they went out of town. For years, the family proudly told everyone their daughter had a high-paying city job as a business consultant. Every holiday, Dad would explain her late arrivals with big projects and important deadlines. No one questioned it. Not even him. Then one night, he borrowed a computer to check his email. One wrong click. One innocent mistake. A very adult livestream popped up, and right there in the middle of the screen was a face he knew way too well. His daughter, smiling at the webcam. Yeah, that went well. The next family gathering was painfully quiet, and from that day on, the respectable father never opened a computer after 9 p.m. Story 3. A secret uncovered at a funeral that was supposed to be respectful. The funeral went exactly how a traditional family would want it. Quiet church, white flowers everywhere, people whispering like the deceased might complain about the noise. The widow sat in the front row, gripping a tissue, doing her best to look composed in front of relatives. But one thing kept pulling her attention away. A woman a few rows ahead was crying way too hard. Not polite funeral crying. Full-on shaking, sobbing like she'd just lost something irreplaceable. After the service, at the small reception, the widow walked over and started a conversation. Just a few short exchanges. And then, yeah, you already know where this is going. The late husband didn't just have one family, he had another one. Secret. For years. And somehow, it got worse. The kids he had with that woman had the exact same names as her children. That was the moment the funeral quietly turned into a revelation nobody was emotionally prepared for. Story 4. The fake past of a grandmother. Everyone worshipped. In this family, Grandma was the main character at every gathering. Elegant way of speaking. Commanding storyteller voice. Always reminding everyone that her bloodline was special. Growing up, the kids were told their ancestors were European nobility, which meant everyone needed to behave accordingly. Heads high, manners perfect. No one questioned it because she said it with way too much confidence. She passed away surrounded by love and admiration. After the funeral, the family started cleaning out her things and found an old cardboard box hidden under the bed. Inside, not jewelry, not love letters, just documents. Real ones. Names, stamps, old photos. And the truth landed hard. She was never a noble, not even close. She'd once been wanted for small-time fraud, changed her name, crossed state lines, and started over. Suddenly, everything made sense. The dodged questions, the vague stories, the mystery, the noble grandmother, everyone remembered turned out to be a role she committed to for an entire lifetime. Classic. Story 5. Twin kids and a biological truth nobody wanted to learn. This family was always proud of their twins. 2 boys the same age, same birthday, same room, same school. Only one very obvious difference, how they looked. One had black hair and brown eyes, just like Dad. The other had blonde hair, blue eyes, and looked like he wandered in from the wrong family reunion. The father ignored it for years, telling himself genetics are complicated, which is true, very true. But as the boys grew up, the difference became so obvious even the neighbors started making jokes. Eventually, he asked for a DNA test, confident that at least both kids were his. The results hit like a brick. The boys were indeed twins, but they did not share the same biological father. The doctor had to explain that yes, it's rare, but it happens. The mother had conceived from two different men at nearly the same time. Science really said, surprise. The father didn't say much after that. He just watched the two boys playing on the floor and quietly accepted that biology does not care about anyone's feelings. Story 6. A weird secret found in the attic. When their parents moved to another state, the siblings returned to the old house to clean it out. The attic had been ignored for years. Dust everywhere, cardboard boxes, that unmistakable smell of old wood. Everyone was hoping to find something valuable, or at least some vintage family photos. After hours of digging, they found a small safe hidden behind a loose board. Naturally, expectations went wild. Important documents, cash, a family heirloom maybe. They opened it. No gold, no money, just thousands of neatly stacked pages. Turns out it was stories their dad had written himself. Not a diary, not a memoir. Hardcore, extremely detailed fan fiction, all set in his favorite sci-fi franchise. And here's where it got uncomfortable. The main character looked exactly like their dad. Same haircut, same hobbies, same catchphrases he used every day. This man really said, write what you know. From that day on, every family movie night got very awkward, and no one ever made direct eye contact with dad again. Story 7. A poor family and the million-dollar fortune hidden in plain sight. This family struggled for years. Dinner was usually instant noodles. Clothes were patched, then patched again, and dad constantly complained that money was so bad it would never get better. He told his kids this was just how life worked. Get used to having less and don't dream too big. Then the father suddenly passed away from a stroke. The family was grieving and quietly panicking about the future. While handling paperwork for the funeral, they found old bank statements hidden deep inside a drawer, and the numbers stopped everyone cold. More than 10 years earlier, he had won the lottery. Not pocket change, several $1,000,000. He never spent it, never invested it, never told a single soul. He let his family live in poverty while he silently held onto the money until the very end. The kids didn't know whether to be angry, to cry, or to mourn what could have been. The father died as the richest man in the cemetery, and the family was left wishing he'd told the truth at least once. Story 8. A marriage that was legal but biologically wrong. They'd been married for over 10 years and were everyone's favorite example of a perfect family. Met young, fell fast, married early, built a quiet life in the suburbs. At family gatherings, they liked to joke that they were basically the American dream. Neat, orderly, and absolutely no skeletons in the closet. That confidence lasted until they decided to research their family tree for their kids' school project. It started as a fun little activity. Names of grandparents, a few old photos, nothing serious. Then things got weird. The deeper they went, the more strange overlaps showed up. Same names, same places, and one detail that refused to be ignored. The same father's name appearing on both sides of the family. The DNA test confirmed the thing no one wanted to even joke about. They weren't just husband and wife. They were half-siblings, sharing the same biological father. Turns out he had a very busy past that no one ever talked about. The divorce happened quickly, clean, efficient. Explaining it to the kids, though? Yeah, there was no version of that story that made sense to anyone. Story 9. The successful relative who was actually a professional liar. For over 20 years, the family spoke about Uncle Steve with pure pride. He was introduced as a successful architect, the guy who supposedly designed major buildings around the city. At every gathering, he'd casually talk about projects, blueprints, and high-stakes meetings with important clients. No one questioned it. The confidence was doing all the heavy lifting. Everything fell apart when one construction project had a serious failure and inspectors got involved. Steve's credentials were requested for verification, and that's when reality finally clocked in. He had never gone to college, never earned a real degree. Every professional license he claimed to have, completely fake. For years, he survived on smooth talking, connections, and a little creative photo editing. He wasn't a genius architect, he was a genius liar. The family was stunned. All those success stories everyone admired turned out to be built entirely on confidence, good timing, and silence that lasted way too long. Story 10. An old diary and a chilling connection to a crime. The daughter was just looking for a few old memories while cleaning out her mother's old high school bedroom. In the deepest drawer, she found a stack of worn notebooks, neatly tied together with string. Assuming they were harmless teenage diaries, she sat down to read them. Curious, a little nostalgic. At first, it was innocent enough. Notes about school, friends, and a rebellious boy her mom had once been completely obsessed with. Classic stuff. Then the vibe shifted. The more she read, the more uncomfortable it got. Names, locations, dates, all lining up a little too perfectly with crimes that had once made the local news years ago. After digging deeper, the truth hit hard. That boy wasn't just a first love. He was a serial killer who'd been arrested later on. And the worst part? In the diary, her mother had written, clearly, that he was with her on the nights those murders happened. She closed the notebook and understood something very quickly. Some past secrets aren't meant to be uncovered. They're meant to stay buried. Story 11. A fake illness that lasted for decades. In this family, Grandma was always in a wheelchair. For over 20 years, everyone accepted it as normal. Carrying her up steps, pushing her around the house, scheduling life around her needs. She said she was paralyzed, weak in the legs, unable to walk on her own. No one questioned it. She always looked tired, always needed care. The entire family built their lives around that illness. Kids and grandkids took turns helping. Trips were canceled. Opportunities passed up. No one wanted to leave her alone. Sacrifice felt like the right thing to do. Everything changed during a small kitchen fire. When the smoke started rising, panic kicked in. And suddenly, miracle of miracles, Grandma jumped out of the wheelchair. In front of everyone, she ran straight to the door, faster than the grandson who played school sports. Yeah, physics said yes. There was no miracle cure, no medical mystery, just the truth. She had never been paralyzed. She'd just gotten very comfortable being taken care of and didn't want to give that up. Story 12. The strict father and a secret collection full of contradictions. This father was famous for being strict. Old school, zero fun allowed. He banned secular music, banned entertainment movies, and constantly reminded his kids that discipline was the only thing keeping the family on the right path. The house had exactly 3 things: church hymns, religious books, and rules you were not allowed to question. Ever. After he passed away, the family started cleaning out his belongings and discovered a small locked storage space no one had ever been allowed to touch. Inside wasn't important paperwork or sentimental keepsakes. Nope. It was hundreds of heavy metal CDs, old band posters, and a carefully hidden collection of adult magazines. Extremely carefully hidden. Everyone just stood there, unsure whether to be horrified or laugh out loud. The man who banned all joy had been quietly stockpiling it for himself for years. From that day on, the kids understood something very clearly. Sometimes the loudest preacher in the house is also the most internally conflicted one. Story 13. The foreign guest who stayed way too long. This family was once very proud to host an exchange student from Italy. He introduced himself as Marco. Heavy Italian accent, loved pasta, constantly said American food was very interesting. The plan was 1 year, then a second, then a third. Somehow, Marco never left. He became part of the family, showed up in Christmas photos, got jokingly referred to as the adopted son. At some point, no one even questioned it anymore. 12 years later, one random morning, immigration officers knocked on the door. They asked about Marco's residency status. The family was confused, because obviously he was a citizen by now, right? Pressed for answers, Marco finally sighed and told the truth. He wasn't Italian, at all. His real name was Mike, born in New Jersey. The accent, fake. The entire thing. He stayed because he liked free housing, daily family dinners, and not paying rent. The family didn't know whether to be angry or applaud a commitment to the role that lasted over a decade. Method acting, but make it domestic. Story 14. A childhood built on a harmless lie. She grew up believing her goldfish was some kind of rare, long-living creature. From kindergarten all the way through high school, Mr. Bubbles was always there, swimming in circles in a small tank by the window. Whenever friends asked how the fish had lived so long, her dad would just smile and say it was good care. For years, she cried at the thought that one day the fish would die. Except, that day never came. Mr. Bubbles just kept existing, like a permanent background character in her childhood. Then, while packing to move out for college, she stumbled across a notebook in her dad's desk drawer. Inside was a detailed shopping log, including over 40 separate purchases of identical goldfish across 15 years. Turns out every time the fish died, her dad quietly replaced it. Same tank, same name, no announcement. That harmless lie bought her a childhood without having to say goodbye too early. Story 15. A wedding staged like a theater production. This wealthy family took marriage very seriously. When their son announced he was getting married, his parents immediately hired a private investigator to dig into the future bride's background. They wanted everything spotless before committing to a lavish wedding. The report came back fast. No scandals, no debt, no shady history. Her record was so clean it was almost suspiciously perfect. The family relaxed and went all in on wedding planning. Then, just days before the ceremony, the truth dropped. The detective called back, sounding awkward. Very awkward. The bride wasn't their son's real girlfriend. She was an actress he'd hired to make his ex jealous and hopefully win her back. The plan failed. The wedding was canceled. The only thing that survived was the acting invoice. So expensive, the family had to hold an emergency meeting just to figure out how to split the bill. Story 16. An urn and an uncomfortably embarrassing truth. In this family's living room, there was always an urn placed high on a shelf, treated with maximum respect. Everyone believed it held the ashes of a late aunt. On holidays, candles were lit. Voices were lowered, like she might still be listening. No one dared touch it. That would be disrespectful. Everything changed when a relative accidentally bumped into the shelf while cleaning. The urn fell. The lid popped off, and whatever was inside spilled all over the floor. There were no ashes, just cat litter mixed with cigarette butts. The room went silent. Under intense staring, Grandpa finally cracked and confessed. Years ago, he had accidentally vacuumed up the real ashes. Panicked, fully panicked, and replaced them with whatever was available in the house at the time. The urn was placed back on the shelf. Same spot, same respect. But from that day on, no one could bring themselves to look directly at it ever again. Story 17. A DNA test that flipped an entire family history. This father always believed his family was simple, clean, straightforward. He took pride in the bloodline and loved pointing out how his kids looked and acted just like him. Then his son was born with bright red hair, in a family where everyone had dark hair. The suspicion kicked in immediately, and he did not hide his irritation. Eventually, he demanded a DNA test, fully convinced he was about to uncover an uncomfortable truth. In his mind, the evidence was going to back him up. Obviously, the report arrived, and reality chose violence. The child was absolutely the mother's biological son. No question there. But the father? He wasn't biologically related to anyone in the family, at all. The test revealed that he himself had been adopted, something his parents had kept secret for their entire lives. The investigation meant to expose a lie ended up rewriting the entire family history, and that's when the father learned a hard lesson. Some truths really are better left undiscovered. Story 18. Homeschooling and the consequences nobody saw coming. This mother always said she didn't trust public schools. She believed the education system was ruining children, so she decided to homeschool her kids to protect them from bad influences. For years, the kids never stepped into a classroom, never took standardized tests, and learned from a curriculum she designed herself. She truly believed she was doing the right thing. Every day, the kids watched online videos, listened to podcasts, and took notes on whatever she decided counted as real knowledge. And the kids believed her, because that was literally all they'd ever known. The illusion lasted until college application season. The kids had to take a basic academic assessment. The results were brutal. They didn't pass a single subject, not one. That's when reality finally showed up. The mother had never been qualified to teach anyone in the first place. She hadn't been providing education, she'd been passing down beliefs. And those two things are very much not the same. Story 19. The job behind all those business trips. For years, this father was always traveling for work. Almost half of every month he was gone, suit perfectly pressed, suitcase rolling out the door at dawn, constantly complaining about a brutal schedule. The family believed he was a hard-working sales rep, sacrificing time with his wife and kids to provide for them. Classic story, respectable, painfully believable. The only odd thing? He always came home Sunday night, exhausted, never brought back documents, souvenirs, or even a specific story. But no one questioned it. He always said he'd just finished another long trip. The truth came out by pure accident. A family acquaintance spotted him, wearing a prison uniform, inside the local jail. Turns out those business trips were actually part-time prison sentences for financial fraud. Weekdays, he put on a suit and drove himself to jail. Weekends, he came home like nothing happened. The family was stunned. The secret job he'd been hiding for years wasn't corporate at all. It was correctional. Story 20. A wartime hero who only existed in imagination. This grandfather was respected by the entire family as a quiet hero. He rarely talked about his past, only occasionally mentioning that he'd been involved in top-secret missions during the Cold War. Whenever anyone asked for details, he'd shake his head and say some things couldn't be discussed. You know, Classified. After he passed away, the family received a letter about his government pension. Assuming it was military paperwork, they opened it with pride, and then immediately froze. The records confirmed he did work for a federal agency, but not as a spy, not even close. He was a janitor. His job was cleaning hallways and bathrooms in a government building. The only thing remotely top secret about his work was that he wasn't supposed to tell people he'd mopped the floor near a senator's office. The room went quiet. A lifetime of legendary missions turned out to be a carefully maintained fantasy, one he committed to until the very end. Story 21. The father who was misunderstood for decades. For nearly her entire life, this woman believed her father had abandoned the family. Her mother always said he left without a word. No support, no concern, no looking back. The story was repeated so many times it became the only truth she ever knew. She grew up angry, promising herself she'd never become anything like the man who walked out on them. Any talk of past attempts to reconnect was shut down immediately. Her mother insisted he had never tried to come back, not once. Years later, while clearing out the old attic before moving, she stumbled across a dusty mailbox hidden behind stacked boxes. Inside were dozens of unopened letters, all from her father, along with money transfer receipts and birthday cards that were never even stamped open. That was the moment everything collapsed. Her father had never left. He'd been trying to reach her for years. Those letters just never made it into her hands. Story 22. Fake success and an uncomfortably real truth. In this family, the oldest son was the pride and joy. He constantly posted photos from Europe, showed off fashion shoots, and casually mentioned he was modeling for major brands. Whenever he came home, he was dressed sharp, spoke in industry buzzwords, and sounded important enough that no one questioned a thing. The family bragged about him to the neighbors like he was living proof of next-level success. Nobody dug deeper. Asking too many questions felt rude, or jealous, or both. The truth came out thanks to a curious younger brother who decided to Google his name. Instead of fashion runways, the search results showed medical ads. Very medical ads. Turns out he was the face of hemorrhoid cream, antifungal treatments, and a few other products that definitely don't walk Fashion Week. To be fair, he wasn't lying. He really was a model, just not the kind everyone imagined. Dinner that night was extremely quiet. The family was still proud. They just stopped asking what products he was advertising. Story 23. The doctor an entire town trusted. For over 40 years, this man was the only doctor in a small town. He treated generations of families, delivered babies, stitched wounds, handled routine checkups. Everyone called him by a friendly nickname and trusted him completely. His clinic was always full, and he carried himself calm, confident, and professional. No red flags. Everything unraveled when he decided to retire. A minor paperwork issue triggered a review of his medical license. And that's when the truth hit the town like a cold slap. The diploma on the wall wasn't what it claimed to be. He had never graduated from medical school. Decades earlier, he'd been a dental assistant. Somewhere along the way, he slowly upgraded the story. Over time, the lie grew, and eventually, even he got comfortable playing the role of a doctor. The town didn't just lose a healthcare provider that day. They lost the sense of safety they'd trusted for an entire lifetime. Story 24. The will that left an entire family speechless. The whole family gathered in the lawyer's office feeling equal parts sad and quietly excited. Their wealthy aunt had passed away, and everyone assumed the will reading would be a life-changing moment. Minds were already racing. New houses, new cars, debts magically disappearing. The lawyer started by playing a pre-recorded video. On the screen, the aunt appeared, sitting comfortably and laughing. And laughing. And laughing some more. Long enough that no one knew how to react. When she finally stopped, she announced that her entire fortune had been donated to a charity that rescues ugly cats. Her reasoning? They deserved it more. The rest of the will contained exactly one more detail. Every family member would evenly split the remaining funeral expenses. No one said a word. The meeting ended in absolute silence. That was the day the family learned a hard truth. Not every rich relative plans to leave their money to you. Story 25. The secret language of parents. When she was little, she thought her parents were geniuses. Whenever they needed to talk about adult stuff in front of the kids, they'd instantly switch into a strange language that sounded very French. Smooth delivery, fancy rhythm, serious faces. Naturally, the kids believed it was some grown-up secret code. She grew up thinking her parents were thoughtful and classy, carefully shielding their children from inappropriate conversations. That fake language followed her through childhood, becoming the universal signal for "you're not supposed to understand this." Then she went to college. She signed up for a French class and immediately realized something was very wrong. None of the sentences her parents used meant anything, at all. It was just random sounds stitched together with an exaggerated accent and a lot of confidence. Her parents never spoke French. They were gossiping about the neighbors, complaining about relatives, and arguing about money right in front of their kids while making sure no one understood a word. Her childhood innocence collapsed faster than her first French lesson. Story 26, an old video and an unwanted reputation. The son just wanted to show his dad an old funny video a friend had resurfaced. Grainy footage, early internet quality. A guy in a cheap superhero costume climbing onto a roof, then immediately slipping and face-planting straight into the yard. To the younger generation, it was harmless, classic internet chaos. The moment the video started, the dad went silent. Face turning red, hands shaking like he was about to snatch the mouse. He demanded it be turned off, immediately, with a sharp tone the son had never heard before. The reaction alone was alarming. Eventually, the truth came out. The man in the video was his father, years ago, wearing a bargain bin costume, fully convinced no one was recording. That clip had spread everywhere before the word viral was even a thing. To the internet, he was a joke. To the family, he was an accidental legend, one whose name was never to be spoken again. Story 27, a strict mother with a wild past. In this family, mom was the symbol of discipline. She hated tattoos, hated revealing clothes, constantly lectured her daughter that those things only lead to trouble. She said a proper woman protects her image and doesn't let the past follow her around. Growing up, the daughter was convinced her mother had never rebelled a single day in her life. That illusion shattered during a simple swimsuit shopping trip. As her mom bent over to try something on, the daughter suddenly saw it. A large faded tattoo across her lower back. Still very recognizable. It was the symbol of a notorious motorcycle gang that had been active in the 1980s. Under her daughter's stunned stare, the mother sighed and finally admitted the truth. She used to be someone completely different. Riding bikes, getting inked, living fast and loud for a brief chapter before choosing a different path. All those years of moral lectures, written by someone who had once broken more rules than anyone else in the room. Story 28, the legendary martial artist and the moment of exposure. This dad loved telling everyone he was a martial arts master, black belt, self-defense expert, fully capable of protecting the entire family if anything went down. Whenever an action movie came on, he'd shake his head and criticize the fight scenes. Wrong technique. That would never work. The kids grew up believing their father was not someone you messed with. For years, no one questioned the story. Then one night, while the family was watching TV, a bat flew straight into the living room. Before anyone could even process what was happening, Dad screamed, launched himself off the couch, and locked himself inside the bathroom. The kids froze. The oldest grabbed a broom to deal with the bat. Mom stood outside the bathroom door, calmly talking to her husband like he was a frightened child, asking him to come out. After that incident, the truth slowly surfaced. The black belt he always bragged about, it was just the belt from a bathrobe. The legendary martial artist had only ever existed in his own stories. Story 29, the vegan family and a carefully hidden addiction. This family was famous for their strict vegan lifestyle. No meat in the fridge, no grease in the kitchen. Every dinner came with a side lecture about ethical eating. Dad loved to say they were healthier than everyone else because they'd never touched red meat. Ever. Everything was fine until the oldest son suddenly got sick. Constant fatigue, stomach pain, hospital visits. Doctors ran tests while the family waited, confused and concerned. When the doctor finally spoke to him alone, the truth came out. He wasn't sick, he was in withdrawal. For 3 years, he'd been sneaking out and eating double cheeseburgers, bacon, melted cheese, daily. His body had fully committed, and now it absolutely refused to go back to kale and tofu. When the secret surfaced, the house went silent. Dad didn't yell, didn't lecture. He just stared at the salad on his plate, and for the first time, looked like he was questioning his own beliefs. Story 30, the unemployed father and the financial truth. This father had long been the family's object of sympathy. He said he lost his job due to company layoffs, another victim of the bad economy. Every morning, he still put on a dress shirt, left the house on schedule like he was going to work, complained about the job market, and talked about new opportunities. The family believed him completely. The truth only surfaced one day when his former boss showed up at the front door to take back the company car. Right in front of his wife and kids, the boss asked why the vehicle hadn't been returned yet. The father ran out of excuses on the spot. Turns out he hadn't been laid off at all. He'd been fired for embezzling company money to buy thousands of scratch-off lottery tickets, fully convinced he was about to strike it rich. The job was gone. The money was gone, and the family stood there realizing that years of unemployment due to circumstances were really just the aftermath of bad math and blind faith in luck. Story 31. A small lie that lasted for decades, and the final reveal. This father had a strange habit the whole family accepted as fact. He always claimed he had severe allergies to gluten, onions, garlic, and basically anything that made food taste good. Because of that, for over 10 years, every family meal was painfully bland. No seasoning, no sauce, no smell. His food was cooked separately, carefully, lovingly. The family treated it as a necessary sacrifice for his health. No one complained, until one random weekend afternoon. The mother stopped by the mall to run errands. While walking past the back parking lot, she saw something that absolutely broke reality. There he was, standing next to a trash can, holding a large pizza, devouring it like his life depended on it. Extra cheese, sausage, onions, garlic, full chaos. And yes, it was her husband. Turns out, he wasn't allergic to anything. He just hated his wife's cooking. And instead of saying that like a normal human being, he chose a decades-long lie that forced the entire family onto a self-imposed bland food lifestyle. The truth didn't spark a huge argument. No shouting, no dramatic exit, just an unusually long silence at the dinner table that night. And maybe, after hearing this, you're thinking about your own family. The stories told for years. The details no one ever questioned. The explanations that sounded reasonable enough to never double-check. Because sometimes the reason a secret lasts so long isn't how well it's hidden. It's that no one really wants to ask one more question.